So I'm totally fangirling up here. I was so excited when Dana asked me to do this one because I'm a card-carrying member. Anyone else? How many of you since November 9th? Yeah. Me. Jen, what's been the biggest surprise for you since the election?
There have been so many, including our federal government's willingness to trample on people's rights. But a huge one really has been the response that the ACLU has gotten. A lot of people didn't get our sort of value proposition, if you will, I think beforehand, right? We are a multi-issue organization. People know us as an organization that protects free speech, defends the Constitution, but we work on a whole host of other things: immigrants' rights, LGBT rights, reproductive freedom, and that was in some ways our Achilles heel prior to the election. How do you kind of message on all these different things? And then suddenly, November 9th, everything changed, and that became our competitive advantage because we can, work from this really intersectional place to address all of these things.
In your role specifically as Director of Online Engagement, you've had this avalanche of interest in the organization. How do you track that? Do you have favorite tracking tools? And to flip the question a little bit for this audience, is there a tracking tool that you'd like to exist that you don't have?
Sure. So amongst the many things the ACLU does, we represent people like Edward Snowden. And so you can imagine we do a lot of work on privacy and surveillance. And we have to put our money where our mouth is. And so as a consequence of that, we can't use a lot of the tools that are out there. They don't meet the high standards that we hold ourselves to, the standards that we're lobbying for on Capitol Hill and with companies out there. So we're a little unsophisticated in these regards. We're also a little unsophisticated because, frankly, prior to November 8th, our membership base was, we knew who they were. We knew what they were interested in. 5% of our membership base was under 35 prior to November 8th, and now it's 20%, which is just crazy, right? So we're trying to figure out who these new people are, what they want, what their needs are, what their interests are, and what kind of connection they want to have with us.
That's totally cool. The kids are all right.
Yeah.
So Daydream tracking tool, something encrypted, something that strips personally identifying information?
Yes. Yeah. Something that strips personally identifying information, something that doesn't use dubious data sources to, match up information about people. We would love to do retargeted advertising, but I don't think any of the major ad networks support that with the data standards we need.
So that one's for the entrepreneurs. We need the opposite of Palantir 3 months ago. How do you plan content strategy when you're operating in a hyperspeed news environment?
This is super interesting, right? I mean, I think, we for a long time sort of fantasized that we were like a news source, right? That we were, like the New York Times or the Washington Post. We're certainly not there at this point, but I think we're a little closer than we were previously. We plan through a variety of means. I would say one of the challenges we have is we're an organization with, in the national office alone, over 100 attorneys, and so if you can imagine content approval processes, they're a little challenging.
I'll just send it to legal.
Yeah. The weekend of the Muslim ban, for example, right? The 3 attorneys who needed to review stuff were all in court. You're not going to pull them out to review a blog post. I think for us, there have been a few things that have really helped. One is, wherever possible, trying to trim down the review and approval processes, right? Sometimes you need subject matter experts, and other times you don't, and it doesn't need to go to 5 people. I appreciated what Liam was saying about the more people that, Liam, who is up here earlier, the more people that review, the better, and yet sometimes the opposite is true. Get it out there, right? We have found when we can be the first with something, it goes much further than if we were the 20th. other things I think that are critical for us. One is that if we expect something's going to happen, write multiple versions wherever possible. And even if you can't write for all scenarios, if you've written for 2 scenarios or 3 scenarios, it's much easier to write for that nuanced scenario when it finally happens. And the other is we reuse wherever possible, right? Everything is reuse. A video comes from a blog post, which came from a press release, which turns into 5 tweets, which turns into, all sorts of other stuff.
The evergreen content, yeah. Let's go back to that weekend in January.
Yeah.
The executive order comes out. They start taking people's green cards away from them. I'm here on a green card, so I'm under my bed in the fetal position crying.
I'm sorry.
What's happening at the ACLU?
That was an intense weekend, right? I woke up Saturday morning and I had a bunch of emails in my inbox. And as it turned out, my team, so I head up the digital team, which is web, social, digital advocacy, video, graphic design. And so we have a weekly rotation for who's on call for the weekend, and it just so happened to be my weekend, which was, blessing and a curse. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the inbox, and it's like, we need to get this up. We filed a lawsuit 5:30 this morning. We need a blog post up. We need a press release up. We're going to have the filing papers soon. And I'm like, I don't remember how to do any of this. We thankfully we had Slack. So people on my team started kind of slowly showing up on Slack as it was obvious things were getting a little crazy, and so we got the stuff up on the website and then turned it into an email to our list. Our email list has doubled. It was 1.3 million before November 8th. It's 2.7 now. It's crazy, right? And email, is still the way we drive conversation above everything else. It's the thing that, where we can push it to people. And so we got an email out to our list, and then, our social media manager is just kind of going at it, and suddenly, we had the good fortune that most of our folks are in New York. So she was like, I'm going to JFK. And so she went to JFK. She's tweeting, she's posting on Facebook, she's hooking up with our attorneys, and then she starts doing Facebook Live videos. And it was outrageous to see the number of people that were watching these. Like, we'd never seen anything like it. And so next thing we know, our video person's heading to Brooklyn to the courthouse because we suddenly heard that the court case is going to be heard by a judge at 7:30 that night. This is a Saturday. Like, this doesn't happen, right? And so she shows up there, and there's huge crowds. And so, I get a text from one of the folks I work with at our executive director's heading to the courthouse. I pick up the phone, have him meet Molly. That's our video person. Have him meet Molly in front. He's like, all right. And so next thing you know, she's doing a Facebook Live when he goes in, Facebook Live when he comes out. We've got 19 million views on this one video. This is like nothing we've ever, had before. So and of course we had a really exciting positive ruling, and it was crazy. And then over the course of the weekend, we were the 4th most retweeted tweet. We were at ACLU is mentioned more than 2 times as many times as real Donald Trump. It was like, we kind of, I think found our sweet spot.
Yeah, and thank you for that. What did you learn from the opposition? Obviously, the campaign and what is now the administration used online media in ways that campaigns hadn't before. Have you taken any of what they do and incorporated it into your practice?
Yes-ish. I wouldn't say that was necessarily an intentional kind of thing, right? But I was having a conversation with a friend one day in January, and we were talking about how the thing that seemed to be really reaching people more than anything is when we were being human, right? When we were, being real on social media. And sometimes that meant being snarky, or sometimes it meant being sassy, or, being funny, or being sentimental. And she said, well, that's not really a surprise. That's what the Trump campaign did so well, is they spoke to people's emotions. They didn't shy away from that. So, I mean, I think, that's something, that I think a lot of folks need to pay attention to, right? There are a lot of organizations out there posting, fairly, or even using a voice in all of their content, not just social media, that's fairly kind of robotic and dry, and people want connection. I think, emotional connection in some ways is like the new storytelling, if you will. It's used to be that, like, you need to have, a picture of someone and tell the story of an individual to really get at people's hearts. And I think actually now you just kind of need to speak to people and be real.
One of the things that the campaign and the administration and their supporters have done is harness memes in a really effective and weaponized way. Pepe the Frog. Where do you stand on memes? Are you pro or con? Do you see disadvantages, advantages?
I love this question because I love memes. They make the world go round. I still love lolcats and look, I mean, it's all an inevitability. We can't do anything except try to keep up, right? I mean, this is how people are communicating. This is how they are connecting to other people. So the question is, are you going to join in? Are you going to participate? Are you going to be part of it? Or are you going to, like, I don't know, be removed from it and thus not be part of the conversation? Do you remember the gold and white versus blue and black dress?
The dress, oh my
right?
God.
This was, I don't, like 2 years ago or something. Yeah. I was at a conference and I look at, my phone and Twitter is blowing up, and apparently my staff, while I was away, had posted, like, a picture of the dress with, like, doesn't matter what color you think the dress is, the only thing that matters is we all have the right to see things the way we see them, or something along the lines. I was like, what did they do? Just because I'm not there.
So is that a positive or a bad?
Totally a positive,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, next thing you know, like, articles are quoting it and stuff, and why shouldn't we insert ourselves in these conversations?
Who do you look to as influencers when you're thinking about how to craft this content strategy? Who are some of the people that you think have really strong ideas around this?
I don't know if any of you watched the Oscars and saw the blue ribbons and were like, what are those blue ribbons? And next thing you know, they're like ACLU ribbons. I was watching it and I was like, what is that? That was pretty amazing. And I think, and Alec Baldwin and Tina Fey did a telethon for us, which was incredible. That's all amazing, right? But, I think back to like 2010 or so, I was working for this organization that was working on conflict minerals that are mined in Congo for our all our electronic devices, and mined under horrible conditions. And we were trying to run a campaign where we would target Apple to take an ethical stance, and everyone's like, you can't touch Apple. We're like, yes, we can. So we did this really funny video, and we got Sarah Silverman to tweet it, and next thing you know, it had 600,000 videos, and Wired is writing articles, and everyone else is writing articles, and Steve Jobs called our policy director, and it was like the best day of my life. That doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
Miley Cyrus has reposted some of our stuff on Instagram. That's been amazing. But the thing that's amazing is when it's sort of like, she's posted stuff that's about trans kids, right? That's like influencers, when it's about authenticity and not about like, just like taking a moment to post something that PR person asked them to post, but it's really about something they care about. That's when it goes far. So Laverne Cox, she's on Orange is the New Black, right? She stood up at the Grammys and said, if you don't know who Gavin Grimm is, you need to look him up now. He is a 17-year-old who is a trans kid in Virginia, and his school board prevented him from using the bathroom that corresponds with his gender. It was going up to the Supreme Court. The hearing was supposed to be a couple weeks ago, and they remanded it back to the lower court. But that is just so the ACLU represents Gavin, and that's the most amazing thing that can happen.
Yeah, when you think about how discouraging it can be, and then you think about a kid like Gavin taking up this crusade, and he seems like such an awesome person.
Yeah.
The kids are all right.
And 500 Christian moms got together and wrote a letter to submit to the Supreme Court. Right, that in support of Gavin, that is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. There is so much going on. I think everyone who's engaged at the moment has activism fatigue. How do you plan around keeping this momentum and keeping this conversation going?
The federal government's making it easy for us. I was having a conversation with the same friend I was talking to about the Trump campaign's use of emotion. She was like, we were talking about activist fatigue, and she said, nobody got tired in ACT UP, right? They didn't get tired. The fight needed to be fought. It will be fought, right? I think this looks so different in so many ways. I had a conversation recently with someone who's tracking all the tools and the meta tools, the lists of the tools that have been built since the election, and something like 600 tools have been built that are things like 5 calls a day, and then lists like websites that list all the 5 calls a day tools and all that sort of thing. People are hungry to do something, hungry to make an impact, hungry to figure out how their particular skills can shift things. So I think that it's so important that tools be created with ethical considerations in mind, right? Like, wasn't there that Mark Zuckerberg gave some talk recently where they saw that he had a sticker over his webcam?
Yep.
Right, that shouldn't have to happen. But we shouldn't be signing over our rights, every 5 minutes whenever we want to use some tool that's going to make things easier. And people, should have a good understanding of what it is that they are signing up for and how they're being tracked as they go from site to site and place to place. So I think, my ideal would be that there would be a lot of transparency and that it would be, privacy first. That's a great question. I don't know if I have a good split. I mean, what I do know is this, right? Anytime I send an email, we do a lot of online action, so petitions and messages to representatives and that sort of thing. So every time we send an email, we have to let's say a petition, 3 to 5% of the people who sign the petition are new, right? So we're looking to optimize for that in a lot of ways. And then if it's really successful, it might be 20%, 50%. In the past couple of months, it's been like 90% new to list from that. I think, the optimizing that across the board, and then also looking at how when we're going out on email, we're also going out on other channels. So, that if you're on our list, it's kind of like we want a surround sound kind of thing in some ways, right? So you see it on Facebook, you see it on Twitter, you see it elsewhere. And if you're not on our list, hopefully you'll see it on your friends' Facebook feeds and so on and so forth. But I do think, I think email it's amazing to me that it's still so critical, even at generating new people onto our list, new supporters, new members. Yeah.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to make an ask of this audience of nerds. What can people here do to support the ACLU's mission?
I think one of the things I am super curious about, right, is if you probably know so much more than we do about how we can understand who our new supporters are and how we can serve them well. So I would love, any ideas, pointers, like diving in with us or doing magical behind the scenes stuff, that would help us figure it out. We're not particularly sophisticated in terms of modeling or anything like that. So yeah, and then honestly, we're a super open team. We recently were contacted by these 3 students at a university in Vancouver who had picked us as their senior project for their user-centered design class, and they presented us with the best project ever. We are well aware that brilliant ideas will come from outside of the ACLU for what we could be doing.
Jen, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everything that you do.
My pleasure.
Thank you all.
Thank you.